204. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors Land Use and Transportation Committee meeting from Monday, October 30th, 2017. My name is Mark Farrell. I'll be chairing this committee. I am joined by our committee vice chair, Supervisor Aaron Peskin, as well as Supervisor Katie Tang. I want to thank Jim Smith and Jesse Larson from SF Gov TV for covering the meeting today, as well as John Carroll, the clerk of our committee. Mr. Clerk, do we have any announcements?
Yes, thank you. Please make sure to silence all cell phones and electronic devices. Completed speaker cards and copies of any documents to be included as part of the file should be submitted to the clerk. Items acted upon today will appear on the November 14th, 2017 Board of Supervisors agenda unless otherwise stated.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. With that, could we call item number 1, please?
Agenda item number 1 is an ordinance amending the planning code and the zoning map to add the Pier 70 Special Use District and affirming appropriate findings.
Okay, thanks very much. So this item was sponsored by Supervisor Cohen and the mayor, and I know it's been subject to a lot of discussion. We had it at committee last week and the full board last week, and I know we have Yo-Yo here from Supervisor Cohen's office to explain some amendments.
Good afternoon, Chair Farrell, Supervisors Tang and Peskin. Thank you once again for hearing this item. And you've already heard the presentation several times now, so I will not go into that any further. In addition to the amendments that you supported at the full board last week, Supervisor Cohen has several amendments she would like this committee to consider today. You should have them circulated, but in summary, they clean up several typos, includes an omission regarding retail and service frontages in the D4D, and corrects the legend on page 12 so that it is consistent with the D4D. And with that, we hope this committee can adopt these amendments today and send them to the full board as a committee report. And just wanted to thank you all again for your patience and collaboration with us on this as we've moved forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Peskin.
Thank you, Chair Farrell, and thank you, Yo-Yo. I just had one thing I think my staff talked to you about, which was just further to the amendments that you guys graciously made at the full board. I thought there should be some cross-referencing of the historic preservation language on page 20, which is subsection 4, to the language that we put in with regard to Historic Preservation Commission review at the top of page 19. So maybe we can endeavor to cross-reference those between today and tomorrow when it gets to the full board. I don't think that that will necessitate any more public hearing because it's not a substantial change.
Absolutely. We will work with the city attorney to cross-reference that before the board tomorrow.
Thank you. Subject to public comment, Mr. Chairman, I would be happy to move these technical amendments and will endeavor to work with the Office of Supervisor Cohen and the city attorney relative to that cross-referencing language that I just mentioned.
Perfect. Seeing no other comments, we will open this up to public comment. Anybody wish to comment on item number 1? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. Supervisor Peskin.
I'd like to move the amendments that are in front of us as amended in the board last week and add the 5 different amendments that Yo-Yo mentioned and send it to the full board with recommendation as a committee report as amended.
Perfect. Motion by Supervisor Peskin. We can take it without objection. Thank you very much. Mr. Clerk, could you call item number 2?
Agenda item number 2 is an ordinance amending the subdivision code to allow subdivision map applicants to apply for and obtain final or parcel transfer subdivision maps that are for conveyancing and or financing purposes only, but do not grant any development rights, and affirming appropriate findings.
Okay, thank you very much. I see we have Mr. Storrs here from DPW. Supervisor Peskin had something to say first.
Thank you, Chair Farrell. I just want to thank Mr. Storrs for taking the time to explain this to me after I read it numerous times and did not understand it. Mr. Storrs has given me a modicum of understanding, and I want to thank Chair Farrell and committee member Tang for allowing me the time to wrap my head around it.
Okay, Mr. Storrs?
Always glad to help. This legislation allows for transfer map legislation, which is already contained in the Candlestick and Treasure Island and the Mission Bay subdivision regs. Allows for sale, lease, or finance without any further development applied to the subdivision. This is, it happens to coincide with Pier 70, and they have a parcel K that the port would like to sell off to help finance some of the rest of it, as well as there's some older lease parcels in there. This would parcelize those leases and make them more subdivision compliant in my eyes, and it'd make the assessor happier with some assessor's numbers. This is going forward. I think early on we didn't anticipate having such large subdivisions in the city, so it wasn't contemplated at the time of Mission Bay or Candlestick.
Okay. Thank you very much. Colleagues, any further questions? We'll open this up to public comment. Anybody wish to comment on item number 2? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. Motion?
I'd be happy to move this item to the full board with recommendation, and thanks again for indulging me.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Storrs, and we can take that motion without objection. Mr. Clerk, what do you call item number 3?
Agenda item number 3 is an ordinance amending the existing building and fire codes to require buildings sold or transferred after September 1st, 2017 to comply with fire alarm system upgrade requirements for sleeping areas, to exempt mandatory seismic strengthening alterations and transient hotels from the alarm system upgrade requirements that otherwise applies to completion of work under a building permit with a cost of construction of $50,000 or more, affirming appropriate findings and directing the clerk of the Board of Supervisors to forward the ordinance to the California Building Standards Commission.
Okay, thank you very much. Colleagues, this item was sponsored by Supervisor Peskin. So, Supervisor Peskin, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Farrell. Early in February of this year, there was a fire in a single resident building, an SRO building in Chinatown at 801 Pacific that got me and my staff, and I specifically want to acknowledge Sonny Angulo, who immediately got to work with various organizations in Chinatown and eventually beyond Chinatown to strengthen our fire protections in vulnerable at-risk buildings. And I want to, first of all, thank the fire department for working with us for many months, and specifically our Fire Marshal Dan DeCosio is here, and I want to thank Chief Hayes White for their unqualified support of this legislation, as well as the next piece of legislation that we have yet to discuss. Originally, these were the two pieces of legislation, items 3 and 4, were combined. We ultimately divorced them into two separate pieces. This piece is very straightforward. It would add that buildings sold or transferred after September 1st must comply with the alarm system upgrade requirement 12 months after the sale of the property. The current legislation requires that all of these buildings must comply by July 1st of 2021. So in essence, this would speed up some of the fire alarm upgrades upon sale, which to me makes a lot of sense. When somebody is buying the building, they should think about that in the consideration of the sale price. The seller and buyer should understand that. And at the same time, we did, as originally intended by Supervisor Campos, exempt, in the case of mandatory seismic strengthening, this provision. So that's it in a nutshell. I do want to thank the supporters of this legislation, as well as our Department of Building Inspection Chief Housing Inspector Rosemary Bosky, and I will reserve the rest of my comments for item number 4, which is a bigger issue.
Okay, thank you very much, Supervisor Peskin. Supervisor Tang.
Thank you. Just a quick question about why the September 1st, 2017 date.
Sure. So the fire happened in February. We started in March. I announced at the board that I would be working on legislation. We actually introduced that legislation in July, and at that time did it with notice to the public that it would be effective August 1st. After we divided the two files, as I previously mentioned, one having to do with sprinklers, which is the subject of the next item that we haven't called yet, and the other around this, we actually let the world know upon introduction that August 1st would be the date that it would start at, but after we divided this file, we gave it another month so that people would know after we reintroduced this that September 1st was the date. It is not uncommon for us to actually do things even retroactive. Before introduction, we didn't do this as of the date of introduction. We gave the world ample notice. There was a lot of media coverage, but we wanted everybody to know that we're trying to capture everything starting originally August 1, which is still the date in the next file, but because of the later date of introduction, did September 1 in this file. So hopefully we'll capture some more alarm system upgrade requirements.
Okay, seeing no other questions, we will open this up to public comment. Anybody wish to comment? I know we have our fire marshal here, the fire department. Anyone want to speak on this item, or Supervisor Peskin?
I see some members of the public who wish to testify, and Mr. DeCosio and Ms. Bosky, you are welcome to add any comments that you so choose. And I really want to thank both the fire department and the Department of Building Inspection for working with my staff.
And real quick before Janan speaks, Yangying Lang, Wing Ho Lung, Sun Yu Feng, and Jordan Davis. So anybody else want to speak in public comment, please line up against the far wall. Everyone will have 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you, Supervisor Farrell. Thank you, Supervisor Peskin and Tang. My name is Janan New. I'm the director of the San Francisco Apartment Association. I'd like to thank you all today for helping us work on this cleanup, which is item 3, of some troubles we had carry over from the Campos administration. This is merely a fix that we asked the city attorney to make that hadn't been made, and now we're finally making it to allow people to expedite their seismic work and follow up and get the alarm systems done by 2021, which is the state law. So we put our residents first, want their safety to be taken care of, and we're here today to support item 3 and also item 4, which is a life safety measure that will help folks in some of the SRO communities, of which some of my people own SROs also. So thank you for your time, and thanks for your attention to this.
Thank you. I list out those speakers from the speaker cards. Anybody else wish to comment on item number 3? Okay. All right. Public comments now closed. I want to thank Supervisor Peskin for bringing this forward. I think this makes a ton of sense. I'd be happy to be added as a co-sponsor to this legislation. Supervisor Peskin, want to make a motion?
I would be honored to have you as a co-sponsor, and if there is no objection, I would like to send item number 3 to the full board with recommendation.
Motion by Supervisor Peskin. We can take that without objection. Mr. Clerk, could you call item number 4, please?
Agenda item number 4 is an ordinance amending the fire and housing codes to require automatic sprinklers in non-residential areas of residential hotels sold or transferred after August 1st, 2017, affirming appropriate findings and directing the clerk of the Board of Supervisors to forward the ordinance to the California Building Standards Commission.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. As with item number 3, this was sponsored by Supervisor Peskin, so I will turn it back over to you, Supervisor.
So in the same vein as item number 3, this is a law that would, upon transfer or sale, require that non-residential areas of hotels be sprinklered. In the case of 801 Pacific Avenue, as well as in other cases, the fires have actually started out in commercial areas of the building, which are not subject to sprinklering. How do you say that? Including basements, where the 801 Pacific fire started. Interestingly enough, 16 years ago, when the Board of Supervisors was working on mandatory sprinkler systems in these kinds of buildings, this was part of the original proposal, which ended up on the chopping room floor. And now, 16 years later, we are taking a modest step. This is not a mandatory requirement for all of these buildings. This is only upon transfer. I frankly would at some point like to get to something more ambitious, but this is a step in the right direction. And again, as SRO hotels are selling for millions and millions of dollars, this is something that the buyer and seller should consider in the transaction. They should consider this as a part of the of the requirement. So if somebody's looking for $20 million and there's a $500,000 sprinkler bill for basements and commercial ground floors, perhaps the sales price should be less. And I think this is the right way to go about it. It is, as I said, a baby step. This is, as we all know, and I think all of us have unanimously supported legislation earlier this year to protect some of the most important and increasingly at-risk affordable housing stock in the city, and that's our remaining 19,000 units of SRO hotel housing. We all know about the rash of fires that have happened in these buildings from the Mission to Chinatown and North Beach, and I think this is a modest step in the right direction. I very much want to thank Gen Fujioka from the Chinatown Community Development Center, the courageous folks who were all displaced in the 801 Pacific Avenue fire, who I promised we would try to make sure that things like this did not happen in the future. Ms. Fong, who is here today, along with some of her fellow tenants, the Community Tenants Association, TNDC, the SRO Task Force. Thank you, Jordan Davis, for being here. And again, this has the support of the fire department, and Fire Marshal Dan DeCosio is here, as well as the Department of Building Inspection, represented by our Chief Housing Inspector, Rosemary Bosky, who gave a, I think, very good, impassioned plea for this legislation that we call the Safe and Sustainable SRO legislation. And with that, colleagues, if there are any questions, Mr. DeCosio and Ms. Bosky, as well as other officials from DBI and Fire, are present.
Okay, thank you very much. Supervisor Peskin, do you want to have some folks come up and speak proactively, presentation-wise, or just open a public comment?
I think it's pretty straightforward. I will add one thing, which is that we recently, a week or so ago, were contacted by folks who are concerned about potential impacts to affordable commercial spaces because of pass-throughs that could go under certain types of commercial leases. And to that end, my staff has been working with Deputy City Attorney Rob Kapla to see if we can add a couple of tweaks. So after we hear public testimony, what I would like to do is continue this for 2 weeks as we work on those amendments. Hopefully the next hearing will be very quick, and I can introduce those amendments, which would have a narrow way of dealing with those situations. So I just wanted to put that on the record and open it up for public comment, unless, colleagues, you have questions for DBI or Fire.
Okay. Seeing none, we'll open this up to public comment. Anybody wish to comment on item number 4?
And I want to thank the Apartment Association for their support.
Davis. I'm a recent graduate of Mission SRO Collaborative's Leadership Academy, and I support the fire safety upgrades and Sprinkler Ordinance 2.0. It was during the first part of my internship that I learned of the fire at the Graywood Hotel at 29th and Mission, and many organizations, including mine, had to chip in and help the displaced tenants because we're all community here. Many of these tenants were low-income or disabled and or immigrants. I learned about the long history of fires in residential hotels and low-income housing, came to realize my own vulnerability as an SRO tenant, and that made me a fire safety fundamentalist, for when it comes to preventing displacement by these blazes, there is no measure that is too complex, too expensive, or too redundant. All I care about is what works. And if you want to know how much this means to me, I currently serve as tenant representative on the city's single-room occupancy task force. And had we had quorum at this month's meeting, I would have introduced an advisory motion putting the task force on record in favor of this legislation, because as somebody who lives in an SRO with a basement, my life depends on it. And I believe that we must stand up for all my fellow tenants, no matter how hard it can be. Please do the right things and pass this at the earliest possible convenience. From the Mission to the Central City to Chinatown and all other neighborhoods, SROs deserve to be safe places to live. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Đại家好，我叫梁燕英， 我今日嚟呢係支持佩斯金加強散房樓宇防火安全嘅議案。
Hi, my name is Yang Ying. I'm here today with all the SRO families to support Supervisor Peskin's safety code to strengthen the fire safety in SRO buildings.
我係一個低收入嘅散房家庭，我嘅收入呢根本負擔唔起外面市價嘅房屋。
I'm from a low-income family. With me and my partner's income, we simply cannot afford any market-rate housing.
我現在住嘅散房呢，雖然環境很差，地方很小，與其他住客共用廚房、沖涼房、廁所，可就係我嘅家園。
Even though SRO is not an ideal place to live, it is small and tight for a family. Especially we have to share a kitchen, we have to share a shower, we have to share a bathroom with everybody in the building. It is still our home. That's the only type of housing that I can afford.
這也係我唯一負擔起嘅地方。呢段時間呢，我們華埠散房發生咗多起火災。佢哋呢係因為地庫沒有安裝花灑系統而引起嘅。
We're seeing more cases of fire happening in Chinatown SRO buildings that could have been prevented if there were sprinklers and fire alarm installed in the basement commercial units.
雖然散房有安裝消防花灑系統，但係因為土庫沒有安裝消防系統，最終呢散房住戶受到牽連。
Even though we have fire alarm and sprinklers installed in the residential unit of the SRO building to protect us, however, if there's nothing installed in the basement or commercial space, at the end of the day, SRO families will be implicated.
無論任何時候，生命和安全都係最重要嘅。我哋唔想失去我哋嘅家園，所以我哋要強烈要求散房商鋪警報器要連接到樓上散房嘅警報系統。
Regardless of when and where, lives and safety are first priorities, and we don't want to lose our home, the only place that's affordable to us. Therefore, I strongly support to require all SRO commercial units to install sprinklers and fire alarm that connects to the upper residence unit in case of fire.
希望各位參試支持散房樓宇防火安全呢個議案。多謝。
And I urge other committee members to support this legislation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
各位市參事，你哋好，我係代表社區住客聯會嘅梁榮浩。今日係三藩市最大嘅草根住客機構，我哋有60多位會員出席呢次支持散房防火安全法案。
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Leung Wing Ho. I represent Community Tenants Association. We are one of the largest grassroots tenant organizations in San Francisco. We have about 60 members here today present.
我哋在座嘅會員都係老人家，大部分都係住於華埠散房。我哋最關注嘅係生命安全，一旦發生火災。佢哋嘅安危係首當其衝嘅。試想想，很多上咗年紀，反應係慢嘅，耳聽係不清嘅，有些還需要動拐杖。若火災不能透過防火設施及時控制，我哋即會面對生命嘅危險。
A majority of our tenants, of our members, they're all elderly, they're all seniors, and when it comes to a lot of the things, life safety is the first thing that we think about. And if you think about when there is a fire, for seniors, for elderly, we think about life safety, right? For seniors, we might be slower, our reactions may be slower, our listening, we may have issues with hearing, we might even be holding a cane, so it makes our mobility definitely an issue. And so when there is a fire, it's definitely critical and it impacts our lives.
我哋指望有個安樂窩，安享度過晚年，這樣嘅基本保障生命安全嘅防火安全法案，我真係想唔到任何理由去反對佢呢。 我哋不可能把業主嘅經營成本凌駕於任何保障生命嘅安全嘅設施。
And what we really hope for is a peaceful home so we could live the rest of our lives in. And so I don't see why there would be an issue in opposing life safety or fire prevention legislation for SROs.
因此，請各位市參事支持佩斯金提出嘅散房防火安全法案，讓散房轉手時可在非住宅範圍安裝自動灑水器，保障商戶及租客嘅安全。多謝。
So we urge supervisors to be in support of Peskin's legislation to add fire utilities or prevention in these SROs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leung.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. This one.
各位市參事好，我係馮蘇女，我今年係88歲。我希望各位支持貝子金嗰個防火設施早日通過。
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Fong So Nu. I am 88 years old, and I really ask for everyone's support of this fire legislation, prevention legislation.
因為咧，防火設施唔設備好咧，就係好危險。嗰啲新住客或業主啊，或者各樣咧。嗰啲土庫啊，乜嘢各樣，一定係要嗰啲防火設施好，灑水器一定係要有。
It is super important to have fire sprinklers in buildings in an emergency because when there isn't, it puts a lot of residents at risk.
因為我係801柏斯域801嘅火災者。我今年係88歲，我喺嗰度住咗30幾年，因為乜嘢都冇晒，我燭燒咗。
I am actually a victim of 801 Pacific Avenue. We recently endured a fire. Again, I am 88 years old. I've lived there for over 30 years, and it puts a big impact on us when you think about everything is gone and everything is lost.
因為佢嗰日嘅時候，樓下係冇嗰啲防火設施，谷到啲煙上嚟，我哋2樓有煙響，有煙道，然之後個警鐘就響。咁樣咧，我一路行一路嗌，所以個個咧就係然之後先至知道火燭。
Because the main issue was the commercial unit or the downstairs, there was no sprinklers, and so when the fire came up, it went all the way to the second floor, and then that's when our alarm started ringing. But by then, all I was doing is just walking and screaming when there was a fire.
希望各位早啲通過咗，支持防火設施，多謝各位。
So again, I urge for your support in this legislation to add the fire sprinklers and to prevent fires from happening in the SROs.
多謝。
Thank you.
Doji, Mrs. Fong.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Board of Supervisors, my name is Laura, and I am a senior citizen in the Tenderloin. I strongly support the fire safety laws. Many residential hotels in Chinatown and the Tenderloin are not safe. They don't have the proper sprinklers. They don't have the alarms even on. And disasters are happening, and more disasters will happen if all these things aren't remedied. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public that wish to comment on item number 4? Okay, seeing none, public comments now closed. Supervisor Peskin?
Thank you, Chair Farrell, and thank you to all of the folks from the Community Tenants Association and other organizations and the Apartment Association and the SRO Task Force and the Fire Department, the Department of Building Inspection for your support for something that we should have really done a decade and a half ago. And colleagues would like a 2-week continuance so I can work out the aforementioned language, and then hopefully we will get this item to the full Board of Supervisors later this month.
Okay, so motion by Supervisor Peskin to continue this item for 2 weeks?
To the November 6th meeting?
No, we
No?
do not have a meeting on November 6th, so the 13th.
And
Okay.
I should have said not the end of this month. I'm already thinking it's November, the end of November. This will not happen by tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay, so motion by Supervisor Peskin, we can take that without objection. Mr. Clerk, do we have anything else in front of us today?
There is no further business.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We are adjourned.